Lamine Yamal consoling Lionel Messi is the defining image from the FIFA World Cup 2026 final. Lamine Yamal consoling Lionel Messi is the defining image from the FIFA World. Here's what almost nobody watching at home actually saw. The whistle blows. Spain has just won the World Cup. Confetti is falling. Players are piling on top of each other. And in the middle of all that noise, a 19-year-old kid, the same kid who just became a world champion, turns his back on his own celebration and walks away from it. Not for a second, not for a photo op. He walks all the way across the pitch alone, while 60,000 people are screaming his name. And what happens when he gets to the other side? What he says and what he hears back is the reason this clip is still being passed around days later by people who don't even watch football. Every camera in that stadium was pointed somewhere else. At the trophy, at Ferran Torres in tears, at a shoving match breaking out near the tunnel. Nobody was pointing a lens at the one moment that would actually outlast all of it. So, here's the deal. Stick with me to the end, because I'm going to give you the exact words, not paraphrased, not guessed at, straight from the player who said them. But you won't understand why those two words hit as hard as they did, unless you know what happened 19 years before this final. Before either of these two men had any idea what they'd someday mean to each other. September 2007, inside the Barcelona locker room at Camp Nou, a newspaper and a UNICEF charity campaign need a baby for a photo shoot. Not a specific baby, just an infant connected to the club, picked almost at random. This one came from a family in the Rofomdon neighborhood of Mataro, just a few months old. In the photos, a 20-year-old Lionel Messi, long hair, nowhere near the legend he'd become, is gently bathing that baby in a small plastic tub. He's smiling. It's a throwaway charity photo. Nobody in that room had any reason to think about it again for almost 2 decades. That baby was Lamine Yamal. Now fast forward. That baby grows up inside La Masia. The exact same academy that built Messi, debuts for Barcelona as a teenager, wins a European championship at 16, the youngest player in the tournament's history to do it. By 19, he's one of the most talked about footballers on the planet, and he's walking onto a World Cup final pitch against Messi's Argentina. Sit with that for a second. A baby chosen almost by coincidence for a charity photo ends up on a collision course in a World Cup final with the man who once held him in his arms. Nobody writes that story. It just happened in front of the entire world. Here's what makes everything that comes later make sense. Yamal never played the too cool for idols game. Even as the comparisons to Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo piled up around him, even as his own hype exploded, he never once tried to distance himself from Messi to look tougher. Weeks before the final, after a big Messi performance earlier in the tournament, reporters asked Yamal what he made of it. He didn't hedge for a second. In his words, "Every match Messi plays is proof he's the greatest player in history, and if anyone still argues otherwise, they're only looking for a reason to disagree." Read that again. That's a 19-year-old at the absolute peak of his own hype, refusing to make it about himself. He drew an important line, too. Neymar, he said, was the idol of his childhood, the player whose style he copied as a kid learning the game. But idol and greatest of all time are two different questions to him. And on the GOAT question, there was no ambiguity. Messi, full stop. Months earlier, after winning an award for the world's best young player, he said something even more telling, that, an athlete has become truly great when they stop being just a legend of their sport and start being a legend across all of sport and society. Messi to him wasn't a rival to eventually dethrone. He was the standard. And then there's the detail that in hindsight feels almost impossible. Months before anyone knew the final matchup, a reporter showed Yamal that old bathtub photo. He laughed and said something like, "I've grown a bit. And Leo has too. I hope I get to face him in a final one day." He said it as a joke. A wish you don't actually expect to come true. It came true anyway, and Messi wasn't silent about Yamal either. Before the final, asked about the photo and about facing him, Messi admitted it was strange to comprehend, taking a picture with a baby only to share a World Cup final pitch with that same person decades later. He called Yamal one of the best players alive and wished him luck, adding that Yamal still played for the club he loved. 2 players, mutual respect, before a single ball was kicked. Now the match. And this part matters, because the real version of this story is more dramatic than any exaggeration could make it. This whole tournament had been building toward this exact collision. Spain steamrolled through the competition, playing patient, possession-heavy football, the same style that had already won them a European championship. Argentina leaned entirely on Messi, and a defense built to grind out own-goal wins. The reigning champions doing just enough round after round to keep the dream alive. Two completely different paths to the same Sunday afternoon. And on the day itself, Spain didn't just beat Argentina, they suffocated them. 90 minutes gone, and Argentina hadn't recorded a single shot on target. Not one. Messi tried everything. Dropping deep, chasing lost causes, running like a man half his age. But there was nothing for Argentina's attack to work with. On the other end, only goalkeeper Emiliano Martinez was keeping the score level, piling up saves that would eventually total 11, a World Cup final record. Then extra time made it worse. Enzo Fernandez picked up a second yellow card, right before the extra period, leaving Argentina to play a man down against a team that already had them boxed in. Messi finally got Argentina's first shot of the entire match in the 117th minute. Blocked 39 seconds into the second half of extra time, substitute Ferran Torres struck from close range and buried it. 1-2. Spain's bench exploded off it, and the celebration that would define the night began. For Messi at 39, this was almost certainly his last World Cup. He'd carried Argentina through the tournament with 8 goals, one of the best individual runs of the entire competition, and was walking away from the final with nothing to show for it. When the whistle blew, he didn't move. He stood in the center circle, hands on his hips, staring at nothing. Then he sat down on the grass, pulled off his boots, and watched Spain lift a trophy that 30 minutes earlier had looked like it might belong to him. Everywhere else on that pitch, Spain's players were doing exactly what you'd expect, sprinting to the stands, piling on top of the goalkeeper, screaming into cameras. Pure chaotic joy, the good kind. Yamal didn't join it, not yet. Instead, he turned and crossed almost the entire width of the pitch, alone, walking against the current of his own celebration, straight toward the one man sitting still in the middle of all that noise. When he reached him, he leaned down. And here's the part that isn't speculation. It's confirmed straight from Yamal's own mouth. In interviews given hours after the final whistle, he told Messi 2 words: "I'm sorry." That's it. No speech, no performance for the cameras that frankly weren't even pointed at him. Messi's reply, according to Yamal, he congratulated him and told him he deserved it even more. Yamal has since described Messi as his idol, his GOAT, his everything, and said he tried to console him right there on the grass before finally peeling off to rejoin his own teammate celebration. It's a small exchange, 10 seconds, maybe less. Most of the broadcast in that exact moment was following chaos happening elsewhere on the field, including heated confrontations between players from both sides. But days later, it's the 10 seconds people are still talking about. Somewhere in that embrace, a photographer caught the two of them together, Messi's silver medal around his neck, eyes red, Yamal beside him. No smugness, no chest thumping, just quiet respect on his face. Put that photo next to the one from 2007, Messi holding a baby in a plastic tub, and you get one of the strangest, most striking visual bookends football has ever produced, 19 years apart. In one, Messi holds the future in his arms without knowing it. In the other, that future stands beside him as a newly crowned world champion at the exact moment Messi's story with his national team may have just ended. Here's what makes this more than just a nice gesture. Yamal is by almost every reasonable expectation about to inherit Messi's exact shadow at Barcelona. Same academy, same left foot, same position, cutting in from the right wing. Records broken at similarly absurd ages. He could easily lean into the "I'm different, don't compare us" routine. Plenty of young stars used to carve out their own identity and distance themselves from a predecessor. He's done the opposite publicly, more than once. He said it's an honor to be compared to Messi, while also being clear he wants to write his own story, rather than copy someone else's. Ambition, without erasing where you came from. That combination is rarer than people give it credit for, especially in a sport that rewards ego over almost everything else. It also lands at an odd moment for how people talk about young athletes in general. The usual story about a 19-year-old multimillionaire with a global following is that fame at that age only produces one kind of person. Someone chasing clout, chasing the highlight reel, playing every big moment for the camera. And then a clip surfaces of exactly that kind of player walking away from his own trophy celebration, unprompted, to comfort the man who just lost the thing he wanted most. No agent arranged that. No brand deal explains it. Just two words, said quietly, in a stadium that was still shaking from noise. That's part of why this crossed over the way it did. It wasn't only football fans sharing the clip. It was people who couldn't tell you the offside rule, sharing a video of a kid choosing to be human before he chose to celebrate. In the days since, former players and pundits with no connection to either Barcelona or Argentina have pointed to this exact moment. Not the trophy, not the red card, not the shoving match as the image they'll remember from this final. Not because it changed anything on the scoreboard, because it's the only part of that night that had nothing to do with winning. Messi will almost certainly never play another World Cup match. That's the hard truth sitting underneath everything else in this story. He came into this tournament chasing a second title and leaves it with 8 goals, a place in the history books as the oldest outfield player to ever start a World Cup final, and no trophy to carry home. But there's a difference between leaving with nothing and leaving having just been told by the exact player expected to carry the torch next that you're still the standard everyone else is measured against. Those aren't the same thing. One is a scoreline. The other is a legacy being confirmed in real time by the person about to inherit it. Yamal, meanwhile, still has to become the guy expected to be Barcelona's next Messi under a level of scrutiny that didn't exist in quite the same way when Messi himself was coming up. That's not a small thing to carry at 19. But if the 2 words he chose in the single biggest moment of his career so far were, "I'm sorry," instead of anything about himself, that tells you something about how he plans to handle everything that's coming next. So here's what I want to know. Do you think Yamal can actually live up to what's being asked of him? Or is the next Messi simply an impossible standard nobody should have to carry? And that walk across the pitch, genuine class, or just good instincts in front of a camera he didn't even know was rolling? Tell me in the comments. I read every one of them. And if this is the kind of story you want more of, subscribe, because there's a lot more where this came